Where's Lucy? They took her.
There is no vampire menace.
What good is that faith when it's a lie?
So between Da Vinci Code, Legion, and Priest, you've sort of cornered the market on religious thrillers.
Yeah, it would appear that way.
What is it about religion and horror and suspense that you think work so well together?
I think, you know, we're obviously a Western culture, and Western culture is hugely influenced by the Old Testament and the New Testament, and I think there's a really rich iconography to use. It's all in our subconscious. That it's a world in which there is no separation between church and state. The human beings have retreated into these vast but walled cities. It somehow feels alien but real.
So I gotta say, if the priest who taught me in high school looked like you, I would have entered the seminary. There have been a lot of vampire films to come down the pike in over the years. What is it about this one that you think really makes it unique?
When I saw the visuals and the plan for what they were going to do, you know, this is based on a South Korean graphic novel, and in the graphic novel, there are no vampires. So these vampires were created by us for the film, and you know, they're creatures. So the threat that humankind is facing in this is quite substantial.
The thing that I was attracted to about him is that he is actually a priest. He's a fallen priest, and he's a warrior priest. He falls in battle and gets transformed into the very thing that he's been fighting. And to me, that's a really interesting place to start. Paul Bettany, he's a priest, and he has to go on a mission to save his niece, who's been abducted by an unseen force.
Well, Lucy is the kidnapped one who's used as leverage to restart the war. She starts out as a damsel in distress, you know, locked in a cage, seduced, starved. And she has priest's blood in her lineage. Paul, or Priest, is her uncle. So she's never really had to use it, but it starts to come out instinctually as she's placed in these crazy abnormal situations.
You know, Hicks, obviously he's in love with Lucy, and he's a sheriff of a small town that's not being protected by the church, and so they're kind of on their own. And so, you know, he's always dealt with this idea of, you know, not being good enough, not being capable enough to actually protect the city if something like this happens, and clearly he wasn't.
He'll come after me. He'll come after you.
That's something I'm absolutely counting on.
You've played a lot of ass-kicking women over the years. What is it about this one that's special?
What I love when you first see her is you're not sure what's going on. You're not sure if she's on his side, if she's working for the church wholeheartedly. You just don't know. It's a bit of a mystery. And she kind of brings the emotion to the surface, and you know, she's that person who says, you know, this life's been really, really bad to us, and you know, I'd really like to talk about it if you don't mind.
You guys both get the crap kicked out of you in this film. You know, there's a lot of special effects, but you're still, you know, going through a lot. Can you talk about like the toughest scene to shoot?
And physically, when I was thrown off the train with wires and there were like 70-mile-an-hour winds and I'm holding on to Paul and screaming, so that physically was the most challenging, but at the same time, so incredibly fun.
What was tough was, in the beginning, we go to this torn down prison shelter of these vampires. You're kind of thrown into this world that you're still using your imagination because there are no vampires there, and yet at the same time, you're really kind of having to get into it. And so that was kind of, you know, it was a tough first week. But
that bike fight was pretty difficult, I gotta say. I mean, it was like, timing for fights already is difficult, but when you're on the ground and you don't have a vehicle and there's 5 guys coming at you on vehicles, there's a trust factor that is huge, number one. And then I also had a weapon, and then we also had rigs, and we were throwing guys off of bikes. And so it was a pretty dangerous sequence, actually, to film.
It's a mashup, a sort of sci-fi mashup between a drop of Western in there. There's a sort of Orwellian city. There is sci-fi. There's Star Wars in there.
And that's what makes it very different. It's not romantic or poppy or any of that. It should be scary.